Welcome to the channel. Imagine a night where the campfire's flame barely holds back the darkness all around. Imagine the stories whispered by the old ones, stories that survived wars, flight, fear, and a night that always comes the same. Today I will tell you more than just a legend. This is no fiction, no tale for tourists. This is a shadow that once passed through real homes, entered real dreams, and dragged away over 100 people. Settle in. Dim the lights. Because this story isn't just about death. It's about what comes when a person believes there's something in the night that can touch them. And about how sometimes, belief is all it takes for darkness to become real. When night descends upon the earth so quietly that even the wind fears rustling the leaves, the oldest spirits begin to whisper. Their voices, like the crackling of wood in a campfire, like the hidden side of human dreams, where a living mind rarely ventures. And if you choose to listen closely, you will hear a story not told in cities. It is too ancient, too heavy, too alive. This story begins in the mountains of Laos, many years ago, but it ended here, much closer than you would like. I will tell it as I once heard it from an old Hmong man. Even then, his hands trembled, not from age, but from memory. In 1975, as Laos convulsed with the shouts of victors, thousands of Hmong people were leaving their homeland. They left behind homes, ancestors, graves, secret jungle paths trodden by their fathers and grandfathers. At night, hiding beneath low clouds and the scent of damp earth, they crossed into Thailand, hoping to escape retribution. Among them was a man named Van Chong. He was in his early 30s, an age when a person already knows the price of fear, but is still capable of going on, even if strength has run out. He led his family through mountain passes where the fog was so thick it could hide even death. But one day, the fog brought something with it. First, Van felt it at the back of his neck, an alien presence behind him. Soft, lingering, like a gaze impossible to break away from. He turned around, but saw only a gray murk, through which moonlight shimmered. "That's not the wind," he told his wife then. She nodded. The Hmong knew how to distinguish the wind from what followed people. "Tsog smells blood," she whispered. It's easy for her to follow a trail. He didn't argue. Because that night, for the first time, he heard something sigh behind him. When the family reached the refugee camp in Thailand, it seemed as if the danger was behind them. Children laughed, women prepared rice, men smoked long pipes and remembered those they had lost. Only at night did the camp fall silent too abruptly, as if on command. No one liked to speak of what happened after sunset. And Van Chong was drawn to sleep, but every time he closed his eyes, he felt someone standing by his bed. A shadow. A female figure. Eyes like two hollows in a skull. She didn't move. She didn't blink. And she waited. He woke up in a cold sweat, but his wife said he didn't scream. He merely froze, as if someone was holding him in place. "It's her," his mother said one morning, wiping her face with a wet cloth. "She has come for those who left their dead without offerings. They call her Tsog. The Night Strangler." Van wanted not to believe. But at night, he no longer fell asleep without fear. A year later, the Hmong received permission to move to the United States. A metal bird lifted them high above the jungles, above the fog, above that which had pursued them for so long. But there are creatures for whom distance means nothing. America greeted Van with cold. Chicago, with dirty snow and neon signs. People here spoke quickly, roughly, didn't look into your eyes. Van tried to work in a factory, but the nights grew heavier. Every time he fell asleep, she returned. Sometimes, in the corner of the room, sometimes, she stood directly over him, head tilted, like a bird of prey. Her skin was pale, as if covered in ash. Her hair, matted, trailing across the floor. But worst of all were her eyes. They didn't reflect light. They absorbed everything. And when she smiled, Van felt a cold finger slowly slide along his throat. He started drinking strong coffee by the liter, avoiding sleep, but his body took its toll. One night, his wife heard him choke. His hands thrashed in the air, as if he were trying to push away an invisible force. His chest rose rapidly, like a blacksmith's bellows. She shook him by the shoulders, called his name. But he didn't hear. Because a creature she couldn't see was sitting on his chest. It leaned into his face and breathed cold. When she finally broke through her stupor and switched on the light, he was no longer breathing. This wasn't the first such incident in Chicago. Nor the last. Doctors wrote the same thing, sudden nocturnal death. But among the Hmong, no one believed this. They knew another name, Tsog took the soul. The elders said that the Hmong in the new country had forgotten their rituals. They stopped making offerings to their ancestors' spirits. They stopped singing protective songs. They stopped placing rice, salt, and herbs by their doors. We came to a place where our spirits are not, they said. And she came for us. Children didn't believe, but at night they still clung to their mothers. Men pretended not to be afraid, but no one slept soundly. A shadow lurked in every corner. Every rustle behind the wall sounded like footsteps. In some neighborhoods, Hmong people died every month. And no one could explain why. But there was one man who returned from her clutches. His name was Kyung. A young man, 29 years old, just starting a new life. He worked in a factory, saving up for a car, but every night turned into torture. He dreamed that the doors to his bedroom dissolved, and that very woman appeared in the doorway. Sometimes she stood motionless, sometimes she slowly stepped over the threshold, bending as if her bones were broken. One night, Kyung felt he couldn't breathe. His body wouldn't obey. He heard his own heart, loud as a drum. And then she appeared right at his face. He saw every crack in her skin. He felt her cold, as if he lay beneath the snow. She lay on his chest, pressing so hard that his body crunched. His ears buzzed. The world turned gray. And at the moment when darkness was closing in, somewhere deep in his mind, the familiar voice of his grandmother rang out, from the distant mountains of Laos. Don't let her take your name. Kyung gathered the last of his will, gritted his teeth, and tried to whisper his full name, as it was pronounced in the village. What happened next, he couldn't explain. The woman vanished. Simply disintegrated into thin air. He fell out of bed, gasping for air. He survived. But since then, he never slept without a light on. While American doctors discuss stress, heart pathology, adaptation problems, the Hmong knew their truth. Tsog pursues people not for their sins, but for their weakness. She comes where fear lives longer than hope. But there was one strange fact. She only killed middle-aged men. Not children. Not the elderly. Only those who remembered Laos. Those who fled. Those who saw death. Those who forgot to thank their ancestors. By the 90s, the deaths stopped. As if Tsog had vanished into thin air. No one died in their sleep. No one saw shadows on their chests. American newspapers stopped writing about it. Doctors stopped raising their eyebrows. People stopped asking questions. But the Hmong elders explained everything differently. She was sated. Or, she lost her power when we stopped believing in her. Some said that young migrants who adopted a new faith broke her connection to the human world. Others, that the spirits only sought revenge on those connected to the tragedy in Laos. When those people were gone, she was gone too. But there are also those who think Tsog is merely waiting. Among the Hmong, there is still a story about a man who heard her voice many years later. He lived in Minnesota, worked in a small workshop, raised children. Everything was calm, until one night he woke up to a soft knock on the wall. 3 times. A pause. 3 times. He thought it was a neighbor. But the knocking repeated, closer now. And then he heard a sigh, the very one he had once heard in Laos. He froze. His eyes adjusted to the darkness, and he saw a female figure standing in the corner of the room. Not clear, but distinct enough for him to remember every detail. She turned her head slowly, as if her neck hadn't bent in a long time. Her eyes gleamed. And she whispered his name. He survived that night. But the next day he left his home and never again slept in complete darkness. I've told you this story here, by the campfire, not to scare you. Though fear is part of the truth. Tsog isn't just a spirit. She is a reflection of what we carry with us from the past, anxieties, regrets, losses. Sometimes we think we've escaped them. That we left them overseas or in an old house. But the past knows how to walk faster than us. And if you ever wake up at night and feel someone sitting on your chest, don't rush to open your eyes. Because if you do, you'll see her. She will wait. She always waits. And she knows your dreams. If this story seems too incredible to you, you can open the reports from those years. You can read the statistics. More than 100 young men died in their sleep, and not a single doctor could ever say exactly why. But their families knew. The Hmong people always knew, when this spirit Tsog comes at night, it takes those who live too long in fear, in guilt, or who believe too deeply that darkness has a face. The only problem is that no one knows for sure what made it stronger. If you want more such dark stories, write in the comments. And remember, sometimes it's better not to stare into the darkness for too long. Because it might stare back.